Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Flynn, and I'm really excited to be here with Campbell Milligan from Monster Children. How are you, Campbell?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. It's great to finally be here. We've been chatting about this for a long time, so here we are. And hello to everybody in chat. It's great to see some friendly faces in there, a couple of new faces as well. Hey, Malik, good to see you again. Johanna, thanks for joining us today. Festus is in the house. Yasunari, good to see you. I hope you are well. Zishan, may have missed somebody, but yeah, it's great to see you in there. And so if you're watching this on YouTube or anywhere else, the chat that we're using today is over at behance.net/live. We're here for 2 hours. We're talking design, layout, youth culture, kickflips, surfing, all sorts of the things that I was never able to do in my youth, but I get to talk to Campbell about it, which is super cool. So yeah, it looks like you're in the studio. Are you at Monster Children at the moment?
Yes, I am. I would flip the camera around, but I'd be scared that it might fall off and I won't be able to put it back on. But yeah, I'm in the studio where no one else is in here today because we're working 4-day weeks. So it's actually quite nice.
Got the whole place to yourself. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah, it's all good. No
Very
coffee
good.
though.
No coffee. That's unfortunate. Okay, maybe after this you can treat yourself for a coffee after we're all finished up.
Yep.
The regulars to the show know this part, but basically I'll give you a bit of an idea of what else is happening today. Here's our schedule. We're right at the end of our week. It's Friday here in Sydney, Australia. For those in America, it's your Thursday afternoon or evening in some places. We're here. It's 9 a.m. in Australia. That's why we're talking about coffee. Design and layout with Campbell Milligan. Really exciting. We're about to get started in a moment. And then a little bit later today, we've got some illustrations and Adobe Aero, so a bit of augmented reality and illustrations with Martina Martian. Stick around for that one as well. So let's jump back to have a bit of a chat. I'm really familiar with Monster Children. I was trying to think about the first Monster Children magazine I ever got, and I'm pretty sure I got it at a semi-permanent event at some stage. And I don't know if you were speaking at that one, but someone from Monster Children, I think, spoke at that event. Does that ring any bells?
I don't know if we've ever spoken at an event. I know that in the early days, I used to have magazines there.
Yeah.
I think they had a magazine stall or something,
Yeah.
maybe, or it went out in the packs. Like it might have been in like a gift pack or something like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I was a student, so I was definitely never sent a pack in the post. It would have been more like scrounging the floor for any like cool design stuff I could find.
Chris and I have only ever done one public talk down in Melbourne. It didn't go too well, so we did it again.
So you scrap the talks. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Well, so for those who might not be as familiar with Monster Children, maybe we could jump over to your screen and have a bit of a chat about Monster Children and who you guys are and what you do and what it's all about.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Well, first, I guess kind of like this is Monster Children. It's a magazine, and that's kind of where everything started pretty much as a printed. So this is the last issue that we just printed. And this is the American issue. We do 2 issues, an American and an Australian issue. So the magazine is, I guess, the starting point to what we've always done. On the screen now is our website. So we do a lot of online stories and content, and a lot more just these days is all focused around digital. So it's kind of, this is our hub, I guess you would say, where everything that we do in the magazine kind of ends up, or we do specific work for the site, a lot of content. Yeah, so that's like the website.
Yeah.
We also run an agency. So this is where we work with a lot of brands. I won't run the show reel because it might be a bit weird, but we did this with Greenpeace just recently after the bushfires in Australia. We work with Levi's, Jamison, Canon, Surf Up and Ski. So there's a few kind of different things we've worked on there. And I think the agency's, like, I'll probably get in trouble for this. I think it's like 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, 7, something like that. It's been around for a while. But it's building, and we kind of do work with like Adidas overseas and things like that. Monster Children Film, something that's just we've launched a year or so ago, And that's just more like we're doing a big full-length production on the Mojave Desert race. Probably said that wrong as well. But yeah, so that's all the film work we do. Vimeo is where all our editorial and creative and films all go there. So there's that page, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah, awesome.
So I think we've got Twitter as well. I don't know what that is. The login. So yeah, awesome. So that's yeah. We started off as a print magazine. Chris and I met at Waves magazine in early 2000s, and we worked there for a while. And then we both, I'm a designer and he was a photographer, freelance together. And then we just decided it'd be good to do a magazine that was all about kind of surfing and skating, but also like the artistic side, like guys like Ed Templeton and Thomas Campbell and Spike Jones, like those sort of guys really inspired what we did. And there was nothing really covering the kind of artistic side of all those sports and joining them together when then. Yep. So we started the magazine in 2003, and then the magazine has just kind of it started off as a full to kind of showcase our work, like Chris's photos and my design, and that just kind of never stopped. And then an agency kind of like came off the back of it when we started doing work with Corona, and then films just with kind of like more content being produced online. Yeah, and that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, amazing.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, and I was doing my research, it's been about 17 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was said before this, I moved into a new place yesterday, and when I put on my rental application, and it said, like your employee, and it was like literally 17 years at one place. It was actually kind of funny.
There you go. Time goes pretty fast.
Security.
Yeah, amazing. So we're gonna get stuck into it. We're gonna do a little bit of design and layout. It's probably a lot more than layout, but that's the word that I came up with. But a lot of design work. We're gonna have a look at kind of what goes on behind the curtain in creating the mag. You guys can ask questions as we're going. But yeah, if you're familiar with Adobe Live, you know that we have a Q&A break in the middle. So we're here for about an hour and a half more from here. And we have a bit of a Q&A break in the middle. So please keep the questions coming. If we don't answer them, we might just be hanging on to them for the Q&A break. And that's how we do things here. So yeah, over to you, Campbell. Where do you want to start?
Okay, well, I kind of feel like I need to start with this. Like, so Chris Ashworth is a designer that worked on Ray Gun magazine, which was really famous in the 90s for David Carson. David Carson designed a lot of them, but I really associated with Chris's, I guess, kind of like I was designing magazines in the 90s too, but just kind of the levels kind of merit of these magazines. They're literally pieces of art. And we recently did an interview with him, and I one of the hardest things for me designing the magazine is when I design a story on someone that I'm actually quite in awe of. And so Chris Ashworth was one of these kind of situations where he's pretty much the kind of like the master of this sort of design, and the sort of design that I've done my whole kind of life as well. So what I thought I'd do is I'll just show some of the features that have been printed in the magazine already, and then how they've come about and how I put them together. So I'll just scroll through this one, and just a quick premise with all this. You'll see that I have a grid that I work off, and then you'll see that I don't usually stick to the grid too often. And it's a visual thing, because I kind of like when I take my guides off, I'll look at a page and know that it's going on a printed magazine, and it's an eye thing. So there's elements that I work in grid, and then there's elements that I see things are kind of aligned, but then they're not. So this is an interview with Chris that we did last 2 issues ago, I think it was. And then, so all the work, like the Andy Warhol, is something that I actually took out of Ray Gun and scanned and kind of like messed up. and then an old masthead that they had on a Radiohead cover.
And when you say scanned, I know you're very tactile with a lot of the stuff. Do you mean like digitally scan it? Do you mean physically?
I don't know if you can see kind of like over. Actually, it's like over there. We've got like a crappy old photocopier, so we
The
kind
workhorse.
Yeah, we do a bit of stuff on that, and that's like where we get a lot of textures. I'll show you this in a bit later, but we kind of like have Letraset that we've scrounged up on eBay and things like that. That I try not to use a lot of it, and I usually take photos of it and then mess with Photoshop just to kind of preserve my Letraset, unless it's something very, very special. So I like to mix. I have a lot of textures that I have in folders, and I just keep textures like this, and then I use them over and over again, but I kind of like layer them in ways so you can't really tell, like it doesn't look like I'm using the same texture over and over again. So I have these that I've saved, and then I will change them and invert them, use different parts of them and things like that. So
you just keep adding to that, like over the years, like you just have like resource upon resource
that
you can draw from.
There's a texture inside that 65 there that and then kind of when I place it over there, it's I'm not using the whole thing, and then this will be a sheet of Letraset that I've just actually used like one part of. So like when I blow it up, it's like that. So you can see it there in the design. So I do things like that. I can kind of, because I'm doing a magazine and it's a regular magazine, I can kind of have all these design elements and bring them into design and use them in a way that is new, depending on kind of like what I'm doing. And all the design I do isn't necessarily kind of like grungy and kind of like this sort of vibe. So it just depends. Or like even like with the images, if I want a bit of texture in an image, I can put a bit of that texture over a photo and just kind of like it adds a little something. So yeah, so this is kind of.
There was actually a question early on. Actually, just curious, where did the name Monster Children come from? I actually don't know this either. So.
Oh, it's a Bryce Courtney novel, and when we were first starting the magazine, Chris and I, for months, like went back and forth with like just names on pieces of paper, and like we would send them to each other and like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I don't know if Chris was actually reading the novel, but he was reading a Bryce Courtney novel, and in it they refer to like a bunch of kids as a bunch of monster children. And I think he sent it to me, and then that was just like the one that stuck. So yeah. I guess that's So there you go, Bryce Courtney novel. I'm not sure. Thanks. I've got it in our 10-year book. It's in there. It talks about it in there.
Right. Cool.
I guess with this, I'll just so Chris Ashworth, I actually did that on Letraset, so that kind of like hand Letraset, and then I love repeating things. So I will have one bit of copy and then repeat it and then destroy it in different ways. So that's just like the same copy, and then just kind of destroyed in different kind of ways. And then I don't even know what that says. I think that's who interviewed 65. So again, that's just that destroyed in a different way. And I find this sort of stuff interesting, and the editors usually ask it to stake. I play with all the leading and kerning on type just to kind of give it this like really squashed and then open kind of look, and I really like doing that. And it reminds me of when I first started. It was like bromide cameras and wax. So you'd like typeset, and it'd go to a bromide camera and come back, and you'd use a scalpel and cut it out and wax it and put it on board. And it had this sort of effect because you were never perfect with the way you kind of like did type. It was a bit off. So yeah. I like that.
We might have lost you just for a second there. I'm sure you'll pop back in. That's cool. You're back. It's all good.
Yeah. And then, so then kind of coming down here, I've kind of used this grid pattern and just kind of dropped things in there. and then there's like, these are like little bits of texture that I've kind of dropped in just to kind of give a bit of texture. And the Andy Warhol picture is, yeah, I think I took a photo of that straight out of the magazine and then just added texture on top of it just to kind of give it all the grit and grain. I usually just do that in masks in Photoshop.
Yeah, cool.
I can show, if anyone wants to, I can show people how to do that in a bit.
I think they would be very interested in that. There was a question from chat, where do you get your textures from? We talked a bit about that. We like actually physically scanning in like other tactile things and bringing them in. Do you play around with them very much, like in Photoshop, like play around with the levels or anything like that? Or do you just kind of keep them as is and like, case by case?
Like these sort of things here are like black and white, like TIFF bitmap ones, so then I can kind of invert them to white, so I can drop them over things in InDesign. And then also I have like grayscale, like really kind of text, like they're a bit more textured, and kind of I use these ones more for like type and layering it over type to kind of to give it a bit more of a depth, I guess, to it. Like, so I can use this, like use the I was pointing, using this part here, and then kind of like use this part and then layer them over the top, and it actually kind of makes a really nice effect. I look on like on the website, there's like, you can get free ones, and I think you can buy some. But I've done a lot myself, and then just kind of like over the years, just like collected them. Like I've just got some that are just really cool looking, kind of they're good textures for type as well. Like just these little things. Yeah, so it's just, I think this is just a thing, like I've been doing this for a while, so I've just developed a whole catalog of these things that I can use for different kind of, yeah, whatever. Like I just know I have them, so then I can kind of like, when I'm doing something, I can go, oh,
that's the one.
So yeah.
Do you ever kind of go through your catalog and think, I'm not feeling any of these today, go out and find something specific?
Yeah, of course. Like, and also you'll find them as well. Like I've been walking up the road to get a coffee, and there'll be a piece of paper on the road that's destroyed, and you take a photo of it, and then, because with these things, really, it's like scanner. It was like you have to scan things in. Now you can just take a photo into exactly where you want it and use that texture, which is kind of really fun.
Yeah.
So I do that. Like, and then I also have this thing where I kind of like, I'll build a picture box in InDesign, and I'll import like this Letraset kind of sheet, and then just the way it comes in sometimes is just perfect. Like I'm pretty sure that one was one of those ones where it was like, I brought that in, and then I just, and the kind of like stroke, just because I like the way that looked, and then I'll design around something. So I like some aspects of the design that are quite kind of like just based on luck, and then designing around it to kind of do that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
And then this one, because like Raygun was like notorious for design and kind of you couldn't read, and so I ran the whole interview in the background of that, and a lot of people kind of like got confused as to why I would do that, but you had to kind of nerdy design joke. Yeah, and I guess like this is just like a bit of a homage to Chris and the way he designed like a lot of all the Raygun ratings, and I've just like pulled the images out and just used the type. And Tom York in the corner there. So yeah, so that's just one of the things. I'll bring guides up so you can just see again. Yeah, so like there's the six column grid that I used, and it's kind of not really stuck to that grid at all.
Yeah, there was a question, someone else had a question, same sort of question I was going to ask before, around kind of legibility. So how much do you care about legibility of text? Like, do you sometimes deliberately make it difficult with colors that have low contrast? And I was thinking the same thing. It must be a balance between like putting text in to be legible and read, and then kind of the artistic kind of or design balance. How do you find that equilibrium?
I guess it's kind of I've in my magazine design, I've always felt that it's quite important to let people be able to read like what the writers have written. It's kind of like a bit of a disservice to the journalists and the person who's been interviewed if you kind of get an interview done and they've gone to all this effort to be interviewed, and then you just like literally can't read a word that they're saying. And I'm sure like there's definitely been cases where I've like pushed that envelope quite to the like limits, but even with this one, like if you kind of, when you see the printed copy, like, and then like you look at the, like that, it's all like where the actual interview is actually quite legible.
Right.
Like I've really tried to like, obviously this, so you can see here, this is like, and that's, I don't know how small that is, but it's like right on the cusp. It's 5 point, so it's pretty small. So that's all illegible, but then that's the whole interview run just in that segment. And then if you come down here, there, like it's, you know, it's all the actual kind of, I don't know. I feel that I usually when we interview people for the magazine, it's somebody that I'm interested in. So I kind of would get the shits as well. I was like, because they open it and can't see it. So, yeah, I do try and keep the body copy legible, and that's kind of like you can see there.
Yeah. Quotes,
I'll play with pull quotes a bit, but yeah, the body copy I generally try. So there's that. It's kind of I guess one of the like I'll show a feature that I did. It was the same issue, and I think kind of I definitely have issues, and they have not necessarily themes, but the design of the features will all be kind of a little bit similar. So this is Alex Olson, who's like a pro skater, and yeah, this was just, again, it's kind of, if you kind of look at 90s design, then I guess this is very in that realm.
Yeah.
Like the A cuts off the page, like just, and then kind of just having a curve. Sometimes square photos becomes annoying, so it's kind of, it's good to like throw these in. This is another like around the whole feature in the background of the intro, and the intro is there, and then a bunch of the different pull quotes are just dropped in on top of each other. I use the A from Alex to just kind of, usually I have an element that I try and bring through a whole feature, so there'll be one or two things that are in the opening spread that I just like bring through through the rest of the feature. I like flipping type on the side because it's a magazine. I like the idea that people are reading it like that, so they're kind of, it becomes a bit more of an experience, like as opposed to just like sitting there like that. You're forced to kind of move the magazine around, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's annoying, but I kind of like it.
That's cool. I really like the idea of like the like using little slices and bits of elements like within the story to kind of bring it together. So even like on a subconscious level, you know, the reader might understand, well, this is all part of the same family, the same story across multiple pages, which is really nice thing for us to keep in mind.
Even like this scribble that's in the background here is just like I was mucking around with like hand drawing Alex's name at one certain stage, and I hated the way I wrote Alex's name, but there was like that scribble on the side of the page, so then that became something that kind of like it's there as well, and kind of, and again, like I'll use bits and pieces of it and drop them. So there's the A in there and the scribble. So yeah, it's like every film has its own little kind of like world that it lives in with like different elements, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's kind of, once you've got an opening spread done, usually that rolls everything down into the feature. So there's like usually 10 or 12 pages to a feature, and so those elements you come up with at the start, or a pull quote, and then they all kind of like tumble into each other. So sometimes you'll design something and you'll work on it for 2 weeks and hate it, and then you'll redesign it in like 2 hours and it's like perfect. Or you'll do the opposite, like design something and it's super quick, and then you'll sit there going like, because that was so quick, is like, did I do that all right? Like,
you feel
know
guilty.
What I mean? Like,
yeah, you're like, oh, I didn't spend much time on it.
Yeah, that happened way too quickly, because I guess like, So this is another aspect to what I do is we commissioned Peter Sutherland to shoot Alex. And so these are just the portraits, not action. We had to get an action photo of him as well, but like this is just another aspect. So like I'll get photos, a photographer, and I'll bring them into bridge, and then I'll like one photo of him in the pink hoodie and then I'll go through and work out, depending on the copy that we've used, like what actually fits the story. So he talks about music a lot. I use the guitar playing ones, and then I really love the mirrored kind of like self-reflection. So I use that one. So just kind of when I get a like story in, so we do a grid up, which I think I can even show you one of those. Is that something that you think people would be interested in? Like,
yeah,
just quickly.
Absolutely.
So when we put a magazine together, I could go like we're doing a story on Austin, Gillette, wave pools, music tech, climate, Sean Evans, and page counts on each feature.
Mm-hmm.
So we commission photographers and to write the different stories, and then during like a 3-month period of a magazine's production, we'll gradually get all these kind of stories in. This is how a story kind of like ends up on my page. I'll have this, which is our Monster Children template, and depending on the kind of amount of pages, I'll just like, and again, I'm sure there's quick ways to do this, but like say this is an 8-page feature, I'll drop 8 pages on there, and then we bring in copy, and there's the copy. And then I have character style. So I have for Monster Children, I use Franklin Gothic book. So then I'll bring in that copy, and then I have say probably 10 or 12 photos. And then it's literally kind of, all right, so I've been doing it long enough that I know that usually a feature runs around 3,000 words, how many pages of, like what photos. And that's like and I think that's kind of like one of the hardest things with designing a magazine is, say that double page, like I've run the photo kind of half a page, the heading for the is quite small on the left-hand side, but there's a lot of white space. That's the design feature. So it's that whole juggling act of, do I photo full page and Alex's name really big, and kind of they're the sort of kind of like juggling and challenging things you do when you're designing something. And it's like for me, it's like I don't want to, like, I've commissioned Peter Sutherland to go out and shoot these photos, so I want to run them as postage stamps, and then I've got copy from I think Jason did this one. I know, and another friend of mine did this one, but and they spent like 3 or 4 hours doing this interview. So I want to make sure their words are kind of like legible. And then he talks about all these surfers that he thinks are amazing style. So it's like, making sure that you give them the justice as well. So it's a real balance act when you do a feature. It's like on one aspect, you just want to design it and make it look amazing, and just like that's it. Like, but then you have to think about the reader, and then you've commissioned all this work from all these different people, and they're going to get the magazine. The last thing you want is like when they receive the magazine to go, oh, that was a bit of a bummer. I went to all that effort and I can't read a word of what I interviewed. So
has that ever happened?
I think
has that ever happened before?
Yeah, we did interview with Jonathan Zawada, and I actually didn't design that one, but we ran the like really fine white copy on a 4-color black background, and it was just like the printing wasn't quite right, so it was like illegible.
Right.
But I'm sure. I actually did. I ran to a story through the spine, like, and just completely forgot there was a spine in the magazine. So because you can't, yeah.
So you couldn't read it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. There was a question from chat. Georgia was asking, what made you choose a landscape format for the mag?
Okay, I can. There's I guess there's like every single magazine is like A4 letter, like vertical, like a usual magazine. And there's this magazine out of Germany called Lowdown, and it's like, well, this one's kind of like a little bit weird, like a squarey kind of one, but we used to love this magazine, and kind of we actually emailed them when we first started the magazine and said, like, we're starting a magazine and we're going to knock you off, pretty much. Well, not like the content, but just like the format.
Right.
Because we were like, there was only one magazine at the time that was that format, and all the photos, like skating and surfing, they're kind of like, there's not too many portrait photos.
Right.
Skating maybe, but like even when back then it was a lot of sequences in skating, so it just suited the photos, especially with surf photos, just like that, like big wide landscape. So yeah, we chose that, and then that's become kind of our business card. Like we can see on that, like, it doesn't actually say Monster Children anywhere very big, but the format of the magazine has become kind of like, as soon as you see it, you go, oh, that's Monster Children,
recognizable
kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we did that.
There you go. That's cool.
Yeah. Now this one.
And just letting chat know as we're going through. Got about 22 minutes. There's some great questions in there that we're going to ask at the Q&A break as well. But keep them coming. In about 22 minutes, we'll have a bit of a Q&A break.
And then this is the cover for that issue as well, and you can see that I've used the scribble kind of like on the cover. Sean Evans is a director and photographer, and he shot this photo of Tom York on tour, and we did a story with him in the issue. And then, like, I'm a huge Radiohead fan, so I was like, there's no way I'm not putting Tom York on the cover. But I guess this is another, I guess because I've been doing the magazine for so long, and the words Monster Children have become kind of quite painful to design because they're both so similar in length, and I've designed in every different way known to man, that I actually now kind of like pull everything apart. So there's an M and a C, and then it's like MONTER, so it's a monster, and then child kind of in there. But yeah, it's been one of the things you tried to kind of get Monster Children blatantly as, like, there's never been a set masthead to cover a zine. Like, it's always been a different kind of, I don't know, like different variation of, like, there's Monster Children written down here small, but it's never like, if you're in a newsstand, it's not like Face Magazine or Time, where it's just like you see that and you kind of go, oh, that's what. Kind of funny, because I do things and I do them in the moment, and then when I come back, what I'm doing now, I'm actually not 100% sure how I've put them together.
Right.
This is like type that I've played with on the side, and then I've in photo, and I've put it in, and it's not like typeset Monster Children. And again, it's like one of those things that I like to have variable when I bring things into InDesign, and the type is set up like that sometimes it comes in and it's like these happy mistakes. So I really like in my design to do things that are kind of, it doesn't look like, when it's finished, it doesn't look like it's a mistake. But when I bring people that had no interest in surfing and skating read the magazine, just purely because it was like designed and artistic. So it was just an opportunity for me, to design 2 covers, which is kind of fun. And then also just cover those bases. Yeah. With that, so like they've got 2 covers. Like, I just brought up some work from the last. So with this one, it's a good example. So there's a skate image with Austin, which is the printed magazine I just showed you, and then odds cover as well. So skating and then music. And then with the one we've just done, it was, this is pretty amazing. So Ashworth, who is a ray gun designer, and he did a cover for us. And this is all hand done, like using like letraset and tape and like packaging disclaimers and handwritten. It's like he sent us it's kind of like really humbling to see something like this, because this is all really amazingly hand done. But then, so that is his one, and then the same issue I did this one, and it's kind of like using, again, there's the letraset, all the repeated letters, and kind of all this kind of bitmap stuff is from the Chris Ashworth story that I showed you before. So yeah, it's like Chris's work is really hands-on and kind of hand-done and amazing. And then I have a bit of both. I use hand manipulated work, but then I kind of always bring it into Photoshop or like InDesign, and I like that layering effect of kind of dropping bitmaps on top of each other and textures. But if you flick between the two of them, there's similarities there, but they're definitely a lot different.
Yeah, cool. There's a question like, how many subscribers does MC have now? You don't have to give us the like exact number or anything, but it'd be interesting to talk about like over the years, like how it would have differentiated, changed. Let's just go with changed. Like over the years, like selling in stores and like I guess getting it delivered. Like, how's it changed over the years?
It's like magazines are really hard right now because again, because of these things. Like no one remember there was a time when if you were going on a plane, you would get like a couple of magazines to read and kind of, you know what I mean? Like you'd see people reading magazines everywhere. Now, like everyone's scrolling different story. But for us, it's like, it's always been a really amazing kind of like business card, so to speak. And it's like the hub of our whole business. Like this is the thing that we everything kind of circles from. It's like, this is the culture that we still believe in. And then all the work we do with agencies and different brands stems from that. And because we have an editorial background and a backbone that still lies in print, it's kind of really important to us. But to answer your question, so we have an office in LA and here in Sydney. We print the American issue in Canada, and then that gets distributed through North America and kind of like up through Europe. And then Australia does all of Asia Pacific. I don't know any of the numbers. I haven't for a while, but I know I do, but I just can't remember them. But it's, yeah, like people buy magazines and our subscription rates are good. It's like news agencies and newsstands in America are just like really suffering. Like Barnes would be huge for us in America, and people just don't buy magazines as much as they used to. So if you want to see printed magazines, you should buy them.
Yeah,
it's a real shame because right, like a while ago, we were getting hit up by like photographers like Hedy Slimane and Mario Sorrenti and doing stories with like these amazing photographers that we would never ever imagine working with, purely because they wanted to work in a printed magazine and all the magazines were dying. And so we were like one of the few magazines that we sheet fed, not web. And, both the printers we use here in South Australia and in Canada are really great and print the magazine amazingly. So there's nothing like if you're a photographer getting a magazine and the smell and seeing your photos and like scrolling, through an inch and it's gone in like 20 seconds. And you spend all that time making a photo or making an image and it's just gone on a digital screen within seconds. So I don't know, I'm like such an advocate for printed magazines and I love working on them. And I actually feel quite lost when I work in a digital world because I know that when I work in a magazine that it ends up here and I get to like, even though I usually hate these things when I first get them, it's really great to kind of in like 2 or 3 months time, just pick one up and then like go through it and kind of, and there's like little stories that like I probably only know, but just like, there's just like little things about a magazine that you can kind of go back to and they're like little time capsules for that time. So I think it's fun.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great. So I think we're going to, we'll jump back to your desktop. We've got about 12 minutes till Q&A. If you wanted to show us some more of the design or some more of the layout, or it's up to you.
What I might do is I might just I'll just do a little like example of how I get some texture and type.
Awesome. That sounds cool. So thanks for sticking with us, guys. There was YouTube just decided to have a little bit of a moment this morning, which has nothing to do with us, but it's just some bad timing. But it all looks like it's been resolved now, which is good. So yeah, thanks for sticking around. Questions in about 10 minutes. It's good to have you here.
All right. So I've just typeset monster and Helvetica bold, and then I have my textures folder here. And what I'll do is I'll bring it in and then make the type transparent or page. And then I will duplicate it. Do I have to, like, do people kind of get what I'm doing if I just do it? Or do you want me to like say what I'm doing when I'm doing it?
You do it, and then they can ask questions as we're going along, or I'll ask you dumb questions as well. It's my job.
All right. So like I'll do this with, I can do these sort of things and like have about 8 or 9 different layers, but I'll do one that's not so complex for this little thing. So what I'm doing is I'm just duplicating the same copy, and I'm just going into my my textures folio here and just going through and picking out. So then I'll get all those and I'll align them on top of each other. And then what I do as well, because I'm going to print, I always like to export. And then it's a really good, and then you can see, I don't know how, like what the screen resolution is like on, but you can see kind of like that's now got a texture in there. And by putting those different layers on those individual kind of type, it becomes quite individual. So then what I can do is anytime I'm doing this, I've not one type the same. So that now becomes its own little thing. And then also what I can do with that, where am I in design, is then I can get a picture box and go over the top and find one that's not so. And do this. And then make that white. And then that will actually erode the edges a bit. So then around the edges, it won't, I don't know, like just photocopy type, it is very organic. Like when you get it out of a photocopier, one's different. But then like by putting white, like I've just eroded some of the edges so it's not so like fine. So that's how I do that. And then I really like to PDF it and have a look at it like that, because it really does give me a pretty like true definition of what it's going to print like. I can also go in to there and multiply it, so then it'll be a bit darker.
And so I think the logical question for me to ask here is why you're using InDesign instead of Photoshop for this sort of stuff, because you could do the same sort of effect in Photoshop, and that's probably what people might traditionally use for this. So I'm just curious, is it because you spend so much time in InDesign, you're like, this is my jam, this is where I'm at?
I kind of, because I'm into InDesign, I like to have as many elements as I can. And I'm not sure like what it goes like as far as the size of the file. Like I'm sure that, like by doing this, it's quite heavy on the computer. It's just nice to be in InDesign, because then also what I can do is slightly offset things. And I'm sure you can do that in Photoshop. It's like what you said. I use InDesign. That's my main kind of program, and so I like the idea of like all the elements being in InDesign, and kind of like when I bring a photo into InDesign and I drop things over the top of it, I don't know, it's just, for me, it's just a bit easier, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No,
like
it's always great to see how people use things differently. And if you're in InDesign, we keep saying in InDesign, in InDesign, you can move things very, very quickly, I suppose, in context in this. Like if you've got the whole layout of the mag, and then you can very quickly play around with it, be creative, see how it looks, rather than jumping around. Or
I guess also I can It's good because this is also where I'm exporting. So when we send to the printers, it comes out of InDesign, and then so when I export a PDF out of InDesign, it's a really, like, for me, it's a really true representation of what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Even though it's on a screen.
Yeah.
And that's quite important. So this now, it's got bitmaps, and I like, and also, I don't know, it's a good question, because there's that type, then kind of put over a photo, and I don't know, I feel like I have a lot more control just in InDesign, just as far as how it looks finally, because I would never design something in Photoshop and then bring a finished design into InDesign.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, I would have like all the elements that I need. That's a great way of putting it. It's like, I feel like InDesign is a really like scrapbook. Like, it's everything gets put into InDesign and put together in InDesign. Like, I have my images that I adjust, like in Photoshop. I have the textures that are all come from Photoshop, but then I get them in InDesign, that's when I decide to put everything together.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then, like I said, like, I can offset all the type and then using those picture box, it's so easy for me to just grab the different textures and move them around to see, like, maybe I might not want to see the top of the T, or maybe the M's kind of like too sharp, so I can move that away. And for me, it's like really quick to just do it in InDesign, PDF it, and then bring it back and just play around like that.
Yeah, cool. No, I really like that.
Yeah.
There were some questions just around that process that you did. So it's funny you said, will people know what I'm doing straight away? Or do I need to explain? But no, I think there were some questions around, are you, with the images, are you just placing them in? Like, is that what's happening? You're placing them into the text, or is it a clipping mask? There's a couple of questions around that.
All right. So what I've done is, like, I've typeset monster, and then I didn't like adjust like any of the kerning or anything like that, so I've just done it for this process. But convert it to outlines, so that's the font in outlines, and then I'm pasting the texture inside those outlines.
Cool. That's it.
I think we spoke about this before. Like, I use Quark for quick keys, because that's what I'm trying to change them, because I'm old and don't want to. And so yeah, it's like, they're literally like placing. So if I wanted to, like, within that, I could, place that photo in there. So that's a good, like, so they're like, I've just done that, but instead of it being a photo, I've used textures.
Yeah.
And I find with these, especially if I'm going over a photo, that the bitmaps work better, because then I can make them white, even though that's what do you call it? Multiplier, which makes it. So yeah, so then you can do a white version over a photo if you wanted to, or a black. If you've got type and you just want it to be black, then you can kind of, the grayscale ones look a bit smoother, but then they become a bit harder to blend, because they're not so like contrasty.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then this is one of those things, like, the bigger your that one there's good. The bigger your library of textures are, the more you can kind of create with these things. Again, I've been doing this for like 15 years, and that's just like one folder I found on a hard drive just while I was working on this. I've got some textures that I use, and if you've like seen, like, there's this, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like these little like white lines on this design, and I use them nearly every issue. And I try to stop myself using it, but I always end up putting it in there just as like, and I will use a different element of it, but there's just these beautiful little fine lines with like a little bit of grain around them, and I just can't help myself. It's like it's like I'm addicted to them. That's awesome. I do have like different textures that I use, and I know exactly what they print like, and I know exactly how big I can get them. And that's another thing, like scaling those things. If you go too big and they become too like pixely, or like there's just something about them that doesn't look real. Like, I love to get a printed magazine and kind of look at that texture and go, that you can't really tell that if I've photocopied that or not.
Yeah, for sure.
And then on that sort of stuff, like getting, like, that's just printed out, and then you just rub it against your edge of your desk a million times and just get textures in it, and then take a photo of that and put it in a Photoshop, which I could probably do if you want. I'll do a quick one.
All right, cool.
Because this is kind of cool. How I've got a minute, so
yeah, absolutely. That's our guide anyway. We can go over that. That's fine. Yeah, Anthony in chat, did he say quark? Yes, he did. So for those out there too young to have been around during the days, yeah, quark was kind of the standard, and then InDesign basically took over from that. And I think we were chatting about it before. I didn't actually know this was possible, but you can use the shortcuts that originally with quark, which must be a long time ago now, and then you can use them in InDesign. It's part of like native features within InDesign, and I had no idea until Campbell showed me today.
Yeah, that's how I am.
I remember quark too. So
I find it pretty amazing how you can do this. So that's just the piece of paper that I had here. I've just taken a photo of it with my phone. And I like, again, I'm sure there's like really a lot of different ways you can do this, but I like to do this because then it just brings up as much in there as I can. Like it's just to get like the highlights in the text. And then I always do 600. Again, it's just like they become big files.
Like 600 DPI.
It lets me kind of like have, like I can run that pretty big, and I might want to use just like a section of the O and the N, and then it lets me kind of, again, I'm saving as a TIFF, that's probably not right.
Yeah, so 600 DPI TIFF or something's going to be pretty big.
Yeah. I'm not sure what size that'll be, but it'll be solid. But then, yeah. So then, like, it comes in, you know what I mean? And even like that, this is like one of those things where I was saying it's nice to just bring things in and just go, like, kind of like tomato design. If I export that, I'll be able to see kind of rough whether that pixels up, because in InDesign it doesn't really look that good. You know what I mean? But then kind of like when you get there, you go, oh, that's kind of cool. Like it's pixely, but it's still kind of like cool. And then so then I'll bring it back in InDesign and just play with that. So then when so there's like two different ways that I manipulate and bring them in. So like layering kind of different textures on top of each other, like this here, like that's one way. And then by either doing that, you can get type and print it out, and then like put sticky tape across it, because that kind of like adds a transparency layer over the type. That then when you take a photo of it, it kind of makes where the sticky tape is kind of like go a bit grayer, and it's easier to bitmap it.
Oh, right. That's cool.
Yeah, so that works well. And then the Letraset, like taking photos of Letraset and then running kind of like little parts of that.
So let's use that as our first question for Q&A is, again, can you, I think you have some Letraset there. Can you explain Letraset as well? I know that might sound funny, me saying that to you. Can you please explain what Letraset is? But I think a lot of people might not know what it is, so it'd be cool to see it.
So back in the day, you used to get, this is Universe. And so it's a sheet that you would get. Should I do one? The funny stuff with this is because it's so old, it's quite brittle now, and it actually doesn't work that well, which is also good. So yeah, you get a piece of paper, you get your Letraset. You won't be able to see what I'm doing here, but you rub with like a sharp object, well, not a sharp object, like I'm rubbing mine with the edge of my pacer. Peel it off. And so that then... So can you see that?
Yeah. 2 T's.
Yeah, so 2 T's. So that just... I literally kind of rub that. So what you can see there, the T's are. And then I rub that, and then it goes there. So this is how you would typeset things, kind of not like large bodies of copy, but if you were doing a heading or like a logo or something like that, you would buy Letraset. So you would find the font you want, and you would literally buy a sheet of like Times New Roman or like whatever it was, like in capitals or lowercase, and you would typeset by hand by rubbing the type onto paper, and then I don't even remember, like, and then you would like scan it or do some crazy kind of like some way of getting it onto a computer, or you would wax it and then it would get scanned into negs and plates and print it like that way. So it's like, and then now these things are really valuable. Like if you're a designer, like I've got a whole bunch of them over there, and I just like really try not to use them too much because they're just really amazing. Like even just like how it's all just fallen apart down the bottom there.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's like an artifact. This sort of
stuff.
Yeah,
I'll show you. Yeah,
that's cool.
So they came in a whole different bunch of fonts. So there's like
Carol in chat saying, I began my typesetting days on a Mergenthaler. Is that a Letraset thing?
I'm not sure.
Not sure that one.
Sounds exciting. Yeah. Do you get borders? Like there's like borders.
Oh, right.
Different. There's like lowercase Helvetica. But even like the way that, like, see how they've used a biro to kind of, I didn't do that. You kind of get the O off, and even just like the biro marks kind of really, if you stumble upon these things, they're really great to get.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So that's Letraset.
There you go. There was another question that came up previously that I was saving for our Q&A part, which is, how do you ideate new content ideas? You seem to have left of field ideas and tone of voice. How do you harness that, I guess, when working with corporates? It's an interesting question. So, I mean, the short version is, how do you ideate new content ideas, I suppose?
Well, I guess kind of usually people are coming to us because we have a specific kind of, like we are in a specific world. So whether it's like who we work with, so all the skaters and surfers we work with are generally like not necessarily friends, but kind of trust us because we have that editorial background. So when people come to us, they're after a specific thing. You know what I mean? Like they're not coming to us for a corporate like strategy, or like we can do all that sort of stuff, but we always we're called Monster Children. So like when you go to Monster Children, it is a specific thing that you're kind of coming to us for, and a culture. And I think there hasn't been too many cases where we've been in a situation and you're and we've pitched and it's just like, well, you know, that's crazy, because that's kind of what we do, I guess. That's what we've built our reputation up by doing things that are quite legitimate and culturally kind of in the world we play with. So it's kind of not too outside. It's outside thinking, kind of like for a lot of corporates, but then I don't know. I'm not very good at all that. Like I don't know. I guess that we do things in a quite legitimate and honest way. Like we don't try and sell something we're not, like we would never try and do something that we're not comfortable kind of doing, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
I don't think that answered that question at all, but
no, absolutely. Like it does make sense. I mean, it's like illustrators or artists, like, you know, will want to get to the stage where they're producing work that people will come to them for their aesthetic style, for what they believe in and what they talk about, and, you know, the space that they want to exist in. And it's the same for you guys, and as an agency, and also as a magazine, and everything that you do within that ecosystem. It makes sense that, you know, hey, we're Monster Children. Like, this is who we are. This is what we do. So yeah, cool. There was another question around: did you learn or teach yourself design, or did you go to art school?
No, I failed art in high school, and then I could draw cartoons when I was in high school. And the first job I got was drawing cartoon drawings of airports out of printers. And then I got hired by a design studio, and Brett Sherwell, the guy that hired me, kind of like was the first person to kind of show me what a Apple was at like Mac and kind of like what it does. And then I got a job at Morrison Media with Graham Murdoch, and he was the one that taught me how to do. I lied actually and said I could use freehand, which is another old software Quark.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember staying back at night trying to teach myself, like I'd open up documents and just kind of like try and work out what the other designers had done kind of in the document. And then just would stay back till like 3 a.m. just trying to like build things in freehand and Quark like people had. And then during the workday would just like stumble my way through like what I did that day as a junior. So sure, I never did design class, anything like that.
Oh, cool.
And it's been like, it's even InDesign, like no one taught me how to use it. Just like one day InDesign was there and it was just like, all right, I guess, you know what I mean? Like I have to work out how to do this. So
how to use it.
It's been like that. Yeah. Like I can design, I guess, like all these tools now, it's just like learning how they can help me more so in like, I know what I want to do, and it's just a matter of like getting InDesign, Photoshop, or Illustrator, whatever it is, to kind of like work for me, kind of to do what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question about working, because I know there's LA and also Sydney, and I kind of want to talk about why is there an LA and a Sydney when you guys started in Sydney, and what's it like kind of working with people within those two different time zones.
All our brands that we work with, like majority out of America, like Vans and kind of Adidas, Fender, those like companies. And it's just printing a magazine here and then shipping it to the States is so expensive. So I think it was like 2006 maybe, or something around then. Oh no, it wasn't that early. I don't know when it was, but we started an office in LA. And it was just great to have someone there in a time zone and just like talking to brands that we worked with. Because at the end of the day, the magazine was run off advertising. If you don't have advertising, then the magazine doesn't kind of go anywhere. Right. So to have somebody in America that was talking to like back then we were like Volcoms and like all those sort of like surf skate brands, and have somebody like face to face, and everyone loved the magazine. So it was just a matter of just getting over there and getting it all set up, and then having a printer that could print the magazine there. So it just like cut costs a lot as far as like shipping, because I don't know if you've ever picked up a box of magazines, they're really heavy. And so like when we were shipping magazines to and from America, it was just killing us in costs. So that was like a big part of it, and having somebody over there that could just be like talking to those brands, and that was kind of the main reason.
Yeah, cool. You don't have to answer this question, but do you see MC around and thriving like 20 years, or something similar to Raygon that retired as an icon? I'm gonna kind of cut that question down a little bit. You don't have to answer it if you don't want. You could also answer where do you see things going with the magazine? Well,
I don't think I'll be doing it in 20 years time. Like 17 years is kind of. It's like funny because I have ebbs and flows where I can look back at the 20s, like issues like around the 20s, and like the design was really not that good, and then kind of, you know what I mean, like there's like times where I'm just like, oh man, just like get this thing done, like I just don't want to do it, and then the other times where I'm like really excited, like right now I'm like really excited to design the magazine, just because we're doing things like, I think because we were doing a lot of surf and skate, and you kind of go, I worked for surf magazines before I got into Monster Children, so I was like so over designing like surf photos and stuff like that. So you have moments where it's like the magazine will go super music heavy, and then like super skate heavy, and then super something else, and it's just because of it. It's still Chris and I that run the magazine, so it's still our interests and the people that work here. So it's kind of up to us to keep it interesting. And I think personally, me, like I love designing the magazine, but I don't want to be doing it in 20 years time. Still, like I have like other aspirations, and I love the idea of like the magazine being kind of like handed down to another generation, just going, okay, you take the wheel now and see what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it'd be nice. I don't know if magazines as a kind of like a thing will be around in 20 years. It'd be nice for the magazine, like this magazine, to kind of keep going, but just in a more youthful way. I'm 47, like I'm good. I'm kind of like, I'm so not Monster Children.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm sure there's definitely people that read the mag that, you know, the next, you know, next generation, like take over the mantle and like, you know, a bit of a passing of the baton at some stage, and, you know, could take it and do some really interesting things with everything that you've built. So who knows?
Yeah.
We'll keep a close eye. I've got a question around, then we'll jump back in. Did you, this is in my research, did you interview Spike Jonze as part of like Vivid? Did that happen?
Yeah, so I was at home watching like Nemo or something with one of my kids, and I guess it was during Vivid, and I can't remember who it was that was interviewing him, but she got food poisoning or something really, like something happened to her that she couldn't do it. And I'd met Spike a few times, and he just called me out of the blue and said, "Do you want to come and interview me?"
Oh, he called
this
you?
Vivid talk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I thought it was a joke at the start. And I was just like, and I had no idea what it was. Like, I had no idea he was in town. I hadn't like, and then, or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, and then I was like, yeah, cool. He's like, it's in a couple of hours. And another friend of ours, Steph Mitchell, was doing it as well. Like, he was like, Steph's going to do it with you if you do it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I get there and it's like at town hall and there's like 3,000 people there.
Yes.
And we did like a shot of tequila before we went on. And it was just, I don't know. It was all right. It was all right, but I hate being in front of crowds. Like, I hate doing kind of that sort of stuff. But it was like really, It was really fun. He cut someone's hair, I think, on stage.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Cool.
Chris went down and shot Where the Wild Things Are on location down in Melbourne when they filmed here, and that was like a really like amazing kind of moment because we're huge. Like I said before, we were like huge Spike Jonze fans. So like when he was like, I think Chris got a phone call again on a weekend, just like a random weekend. It's like, hey, do you want to come down and shoot stills on set? And so he went down and shot all these amazing stills. So that was pretty cool. And that was like I think issue 11 or 12. Like we ran a cover of his. So that was pretty cool. Oh,
that's awesome. Super cool. Yeah, I was very interested in that bit of fact. That's awesome. All right. Well, should we jump back over to your screen? We got a little bit more time for a little bit more design. So I'm just going to jump over, guys. Thanks for the great questions. I'll fix up this timer. And you can still keep the questions coming, guys, as we're going along.
So this is another story. This is Austin Gillette. And that's the cover that I've been popping up every now and again. And I guess this is just like an example of me just kind of, it's not always grungy kind of.
Yeah, definitely. That's the first thing that kind of jumps out. Like it's, not as grungy. There's some more color in there. Like so more geometric shapes, like it hasn't been kind of destroyed.
Yeah. And it's like what I said before, when I am designing something, it like for whatever reason, like a theme will come up, and look, whether it's something I'm reading, I really try hard not to look at design kind of websites or like Pinterest and things like that, because I find you get stuck in these like ruts of just, I don't know, regurgitating design, and like so you go to Pinterest and there'll be all these designs that kind of look similar to each other. And it's really easy just to kind of like look at something and then just kind of go, oh, I think I'll do something like that. And away you go.
Yeah.
I also really like kind of finding different fonts. Although I use Helvetica and Franklin and things like that as a base, just having kind of like a different font every now and again, it's kind of really fun. And just like the F on this like font was really good. And this font's cool. Keiko. So just like finding a new font, and then I think for me with this one, like, I found that font, like that was what started building kind of the colors and everything around this. What I have been doing a lot lately is finding old vintage posters and then grabbing like a screen grab of the poster and then ink dropping the colors of the old posters to get my palettes. And then that's been kind of like really cool, just to kind of, cause I find like I'm really shit at picking colors.
Right.
But then if I find a poster, I go, I love the colors in that, then I'll just like ink drop, like, you know, the eyedropper thing, like get the colors out of the poster like that. And now, so this one going back is pretty kind of like based off the grid. Like the openers is not, but I think I've kind of like, yeah, it's all, this one's kind of like all the typesets to grid. Yeah, and I've used the same font for the pull quotes. The triangles become the element that go through everything.
That's like what we were talking about before, like having that kind of element that sticks around, which is really, really cool.
So yeah, that's been kind of good. Like that's like a good example of just kind of like sticking to a grid pretty much and letting the photos. This is one of the things as well with skating photos, especially like Andrew Peters, who I think you've got on in a week, shoots a lot of the skate photos for us. And skating's super particular about like how you crop a photo, and like I'll get in trouble still to this day about it. But like showing where a skater's come from and where a skater's landing, and then like not having them too close to the top, but like also like that's that whole photo. So I haven't cropped in on that at all. Whereas like a lot of photos I'll usually crop in. So this is like another design thing is like, that is such a crucial part of designing a magazine, is being aware of like what photos require what cropping. A portrait I can do whatever I want with pretty much, but like skate photos more so than anything have to be done in a very, very specific way, and like they've been shot at a certain moment to capture a certain trick, and then it has to show where they've come from, where they're going. So yeah, like, so this is a really good example of just like having skate photos. And usually what I'll do in these circumstances is like drop the photos in first, like get them in and at size, and then design around them. So whereas the ones before, it was like, it's type and kind of all that sort of stuff. So that's like anything goes. Whereas these are a lot more like photos in, and then I know how much copies in there, and like what sort of amount of page space I need to give them. And then I kind of design everything else around that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting, like different approaches to it. So there's a couple of questions in there. Really easy one. What was the name of that font again? We got some fans of the font.
Oh, Keiko, C-A-K-O.
C-A-K-O. And to expand on that, you know, you mentioned every font by name that you've mentioned. So obviously, you know, you have an affection for font. Look at that Q. My gosh.
That's a G. I think it's a G.
It's
really good.
Amazing.
Because that's why I used Gillette on the cover instead of Monster Children, just because it had the G. I was like, that's such a good G.
Yeah, that's super cool. And so where do you normally get your fonts? Like, do you just like sort of sync with the like all the fonts on Adobe fonts, or do you have like a favorite foundry or anything like that?
I don't know what it's called. Like Defont. Oh no, not Defont's the free one. It's like Font House, or I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I could probably go into. I'll be able to find out for you in a sec. I will usually try and buy a font every issue, just like one font, and it might like I've bought so many fonts that never get used because I get all excited and buy it, and then it just, whether it's like it doesn't work the way I wanted to, or whatever it is. It's one of those things that goes back to like before where I said I can design something in 2 hours, or I can design something in 2 weeks. Like sometimes I'll get a font, I'll just go, this is amazing, and like try so hard to make it work, and it just doesn't work. And then I'll just like end up photocopying something and just use that. But yeah, that worked. So
yeah, cool.
and yeah, I go to My Fonts.
Yeah, awesome. And we were talking about design inspiration. You're talking about like avoiding things like Pinterest. I'm sure Instagram's exactly the same. Like if you're following a lot of designers and that's your feed, about like subconsciously or consciously, like looking at other people's design when you're looking to be creative and do your design, that you don't want to just be literally straight up referencing. So there was a question in chat. So where do you go for your design inspiration?
I kind of like, I have a lot of like, I buy a lot of books. I don't know if you can see all my books back there, but and old magazines. I don't know, like for me, the main thing that I look for as far as design inspiration now is colors. Like I kind of have a pretty good idea and understanding of like what I'm going to do design wise. And it might be like a lot of like record labels. Like I love like old Blue Note records, and even just like, you know, Easy Rider covers, just like the colors on that are really cool. And kind of, I don't know, I find looking at design in unobvious places is really interesting, just because of, I don't want to be looking where everyone else is looking as well. Like I've definitely developed a style that I think I have, that I do over the years that I've done the magazine. And like say with that perfume spread that I just showed you, like that, I would consider that like not very me designing, just because it is a bit geometric and I don't really do that a lot. So with those sort of things, like that's literally, Austin's got a film coming out called Perfume, Cheap Perfume, and like literally the whole idea is around that, like perfume labeling and kind of like what would that brand look like, and then kind of putting that into the editorial design. So that would have been like me looking at old like perfume labels and like just this kind of like that little thing there. I thought was kind of, you could see that on a like a little French label. So colors is the main thing that I try and get. Like I'll like literally have a folder of old posters that I've screen grabbed that I like the colors on, and I'll use those colors. And then I'll go to like font sites and look and just have a look at like a serif font if I wanted, or a sans serif, and just kind of go, okay, like I'll just buy a couple of fonts and have them in folders saying like, I think that would work with this and that would work with that. And then when it comes to designing a feature or a cover, I think the photo is the main kind of like instigator of what's going to happen with the design. It's like that Tom York one that I showed you before. There was just something about that that photo that led itself. Like I didn't want to take away from the photo. Like the photo had a lot going on, and so by using the black type that was kind of like the same kind of coloring as the photo, it wasn't fighting the photo. It was kind of working towards it, like or working with it. And I find the one thing that I've learned designing things like over the years is like when you have a good photo is try not to mess with it too much. Like let the photo kind of tell the story. And so with the covers especially, it's usually the best photo in the magazine, you'd hope. And so when you have like those amazing cover photos, you try and complement the photo as opposed to fight with it. So there's nothing worse than like having someone over design. Like I over design, but over designing where you're kind of like ruining or like fighting with a photo is kind of a bit detrimental as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I think the photo, like I'm a huge fan of photography, and I think when you've got a good photo, nothing speaks louder than like an amazing photo with some like really simple, subtle typography.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I don't know what I was going to show you then. Oh, I was going to do another kind of like interesting thing, and it's kind of boring, but it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Is single page departments are like really just like they're like the bane of my existence, because usually you have like 1,000 words. I'm just trying to think of which one's a single. And you have to, it's like a real like jigsaw puzzle. Like, so you have a heading, a sub, an intro, copy, and photos. And so I find single pages are kind of really like a real struggle. Like these are the sort of pages that I could turn into a cluster and you can't read a thing and just kind of, it looks really cool. But these are usually like really information based pages that need to be kind of read and are there for a reason. And so this is like really stuck to a grid. But then like I've worked out that like anything over 500 words is like a stretch on a single page. So this would be right on the cusp of being kind of too many words. They always become like a bit like, I don't know, there's just too many things on a page, or yeah.
So why would you need to design a single page like outside of everything else? Is it like, and is it because it's an ad? Like why can't you kind of spread it out over 2 pages, or what would be the reason for
Because
the
it's like,
restriction?
because we sell, like, so when a magazine's put together, we have like, say, the magazine's 120 pages, and we probably have about 30 or 40 ads in an issue, and
Right.
those ads, a majority of them are single pages, so we have to have
Yeah.
single page editorials because you can't place ads next to ads. It's just not cool.
Mm.
So we have what they call departments. So these are departments, and
Right.
they're just. I don't know. I always found like these were like the trickiest things to design.
Mm.
Like thing, like it's like for me, like designing a double page spread, and I can choose to run like 3 words and a photo as opposed to 500 words, a heading, an intro, a sub, and like photos. And there's usually these pages are like quite specific. Like we're talking about somebody, so you have to like run either what they do or a portrait of them
Mm.
and the copy. And they do become quite kind of like hard to design. Like I really find single pages to be quite hard when you have those like 3 or 4 elements that need to be on a page,
Yeah.
as opposed to like a feature that it's like you've got 10 or 12 pages and you know you've got like a double page opener that you can kind of be quite luxurious with, and then
Mm.
you know how much copy it is. So yeah, like I could
Mm. I find that
open
really
up the show
interesting that
again.
you're designing the ad. Like I guess when I think about like an ad in a magazine, I think if it was someone like Vans, for
That's not an
example.
ad. That's
Right.
that's editorial. Like
Editorial.
I'm
Right.
not designing the ad, but
Right.
it's just like that's an editorial page in the magazine, and kind of it's like what I said before. Like I could redesign that page that's sitting up on the screen now and make it look really illegible but really cool. Like just use one photo and just make the copy kind of small, like in a corner somewhere. But I think kind of like it goes back to what you were saying before about designing something to be legible or illegible. And I think over the years I've come to the conclusion that some things need to be legible and some things need to be like typeset
Mm.
correctly and to a grid, and there's a reason for that. And I just showed like this page as an example. Like it's not necessarily amazing design or anything, but it's just like it's really clean and simple, and it serves a purpose. Like
Yep.
there's a purpose for this page, and
Mm.
it's to kind of like tell people something. Where and then like with the features and like I usually on intro pages kind of go quite design heavy on those sort of things. So it's kind of a magazine has like all these different kind of like elements to it. You have a cover, you have an intro and a content, um, like all the news pieces and departments and features, and some of them, especially like when you've been doing it for 7 years, some of them are just like, oh, I really don't want to do that. Like that's just like it's because they are like little jigsaws, especially like the news section. There's like I think we have 5 or 6 news pieces per page, and you have to place them all with photos and copy, and they do become like quite strenuous, and that's probably why I give it to our junior designer to do because I don't want to do them anymore. But
I was going to
yeah,
say
the magazine,
that's for the rest of the team, right?
yeah, the magazine, it is quite interesting how like the features are really fun and the covers are kind of like stressful because it's like because we are our own bosses and we don't have like somebody over us saying you have to, you know, like say you can there's something to win or like, you know, free
Yeah.
poster or whatever, all that sort of stuff. Or you have to have monster children at a certain way. Like
Mm.
we've done things in the past where we've gotten an artist to hand draw the barcode because we didn't think anyone used barcodes, and apparently you need them. So like then our distributor would call us up and say you need to get barcodes on this. So then we'd have to pay like $2,000 to get like a whole bunch of barcodes kind of
Right.
like stuck on there. Or yeah, we've done a whole bunch of like silly things. Um, but the covers are one of those because we are our own bosses and there is nobody above us. You have that stress of kind of having to do something, and then also kind of like realizing that it is like something that someone wants to buy. So you want to make it somewhat legible or somewhat kind of, you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
there is a purpose for it. It's not just like my design palette to just go crazy with every kind of couple of months. There is kind of something that needs to be, or you know, a reason for each one.
Absolutely. And there was a question before you mentioned, this is something you might give to one of the juniors. There was a question around, do you design the mag entirely on your own, or is there input from other designers? So maybe you could talk about the team.
So I work with a Jai, who's I think he's a junior designer, and when kind of we used to have Tegan, who's like a really amazing designer, and she's moved to London, and her and I would work on it, and we would just split features and kind of split the magazine depending on workflow and who was doing what. And Jai has been here for a couple of years, I guess, and is slowly now kind of getting up to the stage where I can kind of give him features and things like that. So it's usually me and another designer that works on the magazine. I usually do the majority of it, and then Jai will do things, and he sends the magazine to the printer because I hate doing that as well.
Why do you hate that? Why do you hate that part?
It's just PDFing a magazine into single pages with ads, and it's just a nightmare. It's I always used to fight with the printers because I would just literally package up all my InDesign files and just send it to them, and they were like, "You have to PDF this into a single page thing."
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "No, I don't want to do that. You can do that. I'm not mucking around with that." And then when when we finally got junior designers, I was like, "Well, this is your job now."
Yes.
And that always
the first job that you gave them.
Yeah, they would always hate that as well. So so that it's kind of, I do a majority of the magazine, and then kind of depending on timing and kind of what's happening, I'll give Jai, and then he sends it as well.
Oh, that's cool. Do you get flooded with that idea of juniors and teens and all that stuff? Do you get flooded with people wanting to work for Monster Children? Because it's a very cool brand. I'd imagine that a lot of graduates and people that follow the mag that are into the sort of culture and everything that the magazine's all about would love to work where you guys are. You have a super cool studio as well.
Yeah, we do a bit. It's just taking interns on is such a hard, because this place is quite busy. When we're not doing the magazine, there's so much other stuff. Right now, I've got about so many emails just piling up on the left there, just asking you where things are, and
just send them a link to the stream.
It's one of those things that's kind of taking on an intern is or taking on a junior or anything like that is you have to be aware. We don't want to do it and just go sit over in the corner and I don't know, design some logos or whatever. We're a pretty small group of people. There's probably 5 or 6 people in here for the magazine, and on the creative side, another 10 or 12, and it's pretty small. So it's everyone has multiple kind of jobs to do, and we're all pretty on the hustle all the time. So to take somebody in an intern or a junior, it's time consuming, because you have to they may be able to design, and they may be able to run all the programs perfectly and teach me some things, but it's just the way we do things and the way things look when they come out of the studio is a very specific thing. So it's just a matter of being aware that you have to kind of devote time to do that sort of stuff. So we do, but it's kind of very we get a lot. And we usually take on a bunch of people, and we realize that it's not fair on them and us to kind of take on people if we don't have the time, or we don't feel that person kind of wants to kind of, I don't know, expand their role within the company or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got about 20 minutes left, I think. I got a bunch of questions that we can ask, but if you had anything to show, we could do that. It's up to you.
I'm just thinking what else I can kind of show. I've gone through my features, my textures. I don't know, is there anything else people want to see, or should I just
let us know, guys. Let us know in chat. We've got a little bit more time, so we've got time to maybe check 1 or 2 more things out. So if there's anything design related that you wanted to check out,
here's I can just show some kind of things I'm working on at the moment. We're doing a big online feature called Bright Young Things, and
you can just minimize the Chrome window that's got our videos all the way in the back there.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, that little one. Yeah, cool.
And this is just like using kind of what I was showing before, just kind of like layering elements. And there's some handwritten type that was done by Steph Mitchell and that's that there. I kind of find like my job is, that's not opening up, is I like put things together. I love the aspect of my job where I get photos and I get type and like all these different things and I put it together. And I think that's like a really fun part. And when you understand that and you realize the importance of all those elements, then that's kind of when everything works really well. This is like type by a guy called PC Worship, who does really amazing typography with photocopier. And then like I've done the Bright Young things, and then I've dropped like some kind of grain and stuff over the top of that. And that's kind of, and then like, yeah, so that's kind of where it comes from originally.
Oh, wow.
And just kind of, yeah. And this is like a feature that was in the magazine that we're now kind of like turning into like this like online feature where we'll like focus on young kind of like kids that are just doing really cool things in their fields. So it started off like that. I really love that. I love those like the title Bright Young Things, and now like using that and then bringing it forward into it's going online. So all these be like little banners and things like that. So it's kind of I guess a lot of like, and this is something that's really interesting is we're now trying to work out how to design online, like how to design web pages. So when we have a magazine story, I hate those digital flip magazine things online.
Oh yeah, like where it like animates to pretend like you pull the cursor to turn the page kind of thing.
Yeah, all that. So like I've kind of like I just
that's garbage.
Get my head in.
No, I hate them. I hate them as well. It's like the idea of like skeuomorphism like happening.
Yeah.
It's like digital's digital and physical's physical. Like it never the twain shall meet. Like it's a very very strange kind of design decision. I've always found it a bit weird.
So like that that's been something that we're kind of like working at, and Jai is really good at animating type and doing all that sort of stuff. So we're like playing around with like I do the graphics like I just showed you, and even kind of like that graphic in the background there, and he is like working on different ways to animate that. So then kind of like the digital aspect of it is kind of like a bit more thoughtful, and we're taking in consideration that if it isn't in a printed kind of format, then how is that shown online, which is quite fun. I was going to show another kind of thing. Oh, hang on.
Cool. About 15 minutes left, just letting chat and everybody know. I don't know if will you get sound? I don't think we're going to get your sound. We'll be lucky if we do. I don't think so. No, I don't think we're going to get that.
So you can't get the sound on that?
No, I don't have the sound, unfortunately.
But I guess I was just going to show this as like an example of like we started Monster Children Films because we were making so many films. Like we directed a short documentary for Levi's in Christchurch, and we've done a bunch of work for Corona, and like that's become something now that we're like working a lot more on, and it's just like type specific for those sort of things. And I design the statics and then hand it over to Jai or somebody to kind of like animate it. And that's been really interesting just to kind of see, like it's a really great progression from printed magazine to digital, just that aspect of kind of type moving and kind of like, it's like what I was saying before, how it complements an image as opposed to like distracting from it. I think the idea of type on a moving kind of like image video and just like the way it interacts with it, like how it comes in and out, like that's something that we're now like working a lot more towards, and that's been really fun just to kind of designing type and kind of effects and how they kind of like relate to a motion kind of piece is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of leads me to another question that was asked a while ago, Georgia. Sorry it took me so long to get to your question, but what do you recommend for someone starting out when internships are like slim to none in the magazine field for design? And I'll just throw in the caveat. Like, I think it's quite interesting that you're talking about Jai having those digital skills and how that's coming in, integrating with the magazine. And I wonder if there's some tips in there for someone that might be interested in that sort of thing.
I guess the big thing for us is initiative. Like, if you've done something, like say you've grabbed like the Monster Children graphic that's on my screen there, and you've just done something yourself and send it to me and just go, oh, hey, like I'm a junior designer and I just did this. Like, let me know what you think. I'm way more like likely to respond than I am like if some kids just like, hey, can you get me to intern? I think just showing initiative, or like, obviously we're a magazine. So if you made your own zine, like with images you found out of the magazine, or like you did something like a profile on like one of your friends that's a skater. I kind of feel like everybody has a computer these days. Everybody has like the Adobe software. So use it, like put it to use and send it to me. We've had like so many people that contribute to the magazine, like whether it's illustrators or writers or photographers that have done exactly that, like sent a magazine or like a zine they've done, or shown us something or something they've done that's like, oh, like I've just done this t-shirt print for you, or like whatever it is. And then they've continued to work. PC Worship was one of those sort of people we did something with, and then like now he's kind of like, we have a really great working relationship because he knows the kind of thing that we're after, and like we just send like these pages of graphics to us, and it's just like amazing. And that just all stemmed from just kind of a brief encounter, or like him showing us something that was similar to what we did. So I think kind of doing things like, if you're sitting at home on your computer, like design a logo, put together a 20-page zine. And there could be just like 1 page or 2 pages in there that I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then maybe you can do something, or like, I don't know. I kind of feel like that's a good way to go.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I really like that. That's some good advice. So I hope that helps out. It's interesting that you just mentioned illustration, because Rory is asking, you've shown a lot of photography. Do you still use any illustration? I was a fan of a magazine called Lowdown that used to feature a lot of street artists. So yeah, do you still use any illustration, or is it much more of a focus on photography?
It's like what I said before. We go through stages where we focus on certain kind of genres within our culture, and I think early on we really kind of like did like all the artists that we really, really loved. Like we would kind of feature them, and they did covers. Like Thomas Campbell did a cover, and Ed did a cover, and like all those guys did covers. And then after a while, I was like, all right, we've done all that for a while. Like, let's go to like, and then we started doing music. In saying that, like the last couple of issues have both featured illustrators and painters, not necessarily street art. We've never really like street art being like, I don't know, is that graffiti, or like we've done, like Espo, I guess, is a street artist. We've done work with them. Like we've done work with a whole bunch of different street artists. Like we've got a gallery in LA. We had one here. So we've done and still continue to work with a lot of artists. But I guess kind of when we do like artists, it's kind of like James Evans, an artist, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like, so we're still working with artists, but it's like a profile on them. It's usually a studio. Like we'll take images, like take photos of their like studio. It's hard to work with artists unless you commission them for a cover, and like that can be quite a process, like to get somebody to like paint a cover or do something like that. So there's another one of those, like someone asked me a question and I don't think I answered it properly, but we do work with artists and street artists, but it's like it's not generally the way it used to be. It's like we used to do a lot more, but now we don't so much. But that, in saying that, like next year we might do a lot more.
Yeah, the ebbs and flows. That's pretty cool. I got a couple more questions. Is there an online digital version of the magazine as well, which is interesting because we're talking about like, that fake page turning like kind of stuff.
Well, there is actually the last issues. I'm pretty sure the first one we did I think if you go to our website, it's on there.
Mm.
And that was because of COVID, because we were like, no one was really out buying magazines. So we thought it'd be cool to kind of just give people the opportunity to have like an online version. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure we're probably going to do the next one like that. And that's kind of goes back to what I was saying before about us working on ways that we can replicate what we did in a printed magazine online without it being like the flippy, whatever that thing's called.
Mm. Yeah, cool. I've got some more questions in here. Just lost them in a sea of text. 1 second. Where are we? Yeah, so actually there was a question around the quarantine is how has that impacted you guys? You said there's no one else in the studio today, like everyone working remote and all that. How has that kind of impacted you guys?
It's been like the hardest thing for us is like saying for taking photos of people we want to do stories in the magazine or filming them, because like a lot of what we do now is film based. So actually being able to like go somewhere and film somebody or take photos, portraits of somebody has been kind of like quite tricky. We did a thing in LA for Vans where we had a photographer like turn up to people's houses, but like using a long lens shooting kind of portraits like from the car or like from the street, shooting down the driveway or things like that. Interviewing people's been kind of, that's like easy because it's across like, well, we've been doing a lot of like FaceTime interviews and stuff with people and filming them. We did a thing called Gone Viral that is on the website where we actually just like spoke to people and they were like showing us around their houses and what was going on during COVID. But yeah, the biggest thing is like filming and like shooting studios and things like that. It's been really hard. And a lot of what we do is like, you know, like not so much parties, but like events around launches and things like that has all been stopped because we can't kind of all get together and have a beer.
That's right. Yeah, it's like an indefinite kind of pause on all that sort of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely made us all rethink the way we work as well, and kind of like how like just be a bit clever about the way we do things as well. I think which has been kind of good for us as a company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole world is rethinking everything and how everything's changing at the moment. And I think that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good note to kind of end on, like our unsure collective future. But yeah, it's been great hanging out with you today. Thanks for showing us everything. I've had a really great time.
Worries.
And thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry. Do you have something more to say?
And I was just like, I hope I don't think I really showed anyone how to design things, but I guess like my whole thing was just to show people, just like the all the different levels and like within a document, like all the different parts and like how important they all are, and kind of, and that's like what design is being really respectful of each different element and kind of not overpowering each one as well, which is quite a big thing.
Yeah, trying to find that balance. And we did talk a lot about that. Like we talked a lot about the layout. I really love the element idea of bringing in the kind of either, you know, subtly or really clearly, like bringing in those elements to tie a story together. I think that's a really, really awesome kind of nuance kind of tidbit that you've learned along the way that I'd certainly never heard before whenever I've talked to any designer. So I think it's a really, really, really cool thing. But yeah, it's been great. And thank you, chat, for all of the questions. Definitely check out Monster Children. We're actually back again next week with another special Monster Children event, but this time from LA, which is going to be very cool for the photographers out there. So you're going to have a great time. And we are back actually in about half an hour with Martina Martian, and we're going to be doing some augmented reality and some illustrations all mashed together. And Campbell, thank you so much. Had a great time with you today.
No worries. Thanks for that.
Cool. See you, everyone.
All right. See ya.